A joyful family reunion, laughter filling the air, until one moment changes everything. A wife steps forward, a secret in her hands, and in front of everyone, she exposes her husband's affair with his coworker. The room falls silent. Eyes widen. No one saw this coming. In today's video, we're diving into one of the most shocking real-life confrontations, a woman who chose the most unexpected place to reveal her husband's betrayal. What led her to this bold move? How did the family react? And what happened next? Stay with us till the end as we uncover every twist and turn in this unbelievable story. You'll learn how small clues led to a shocking discovery, how the confrontation unfolded, and the unexpected fallout that followed. This is not just drama. It's a lesson in trust, deception, and the consequences of secrets coming to light. Let's get started. Before we talk about the shocking moment that changed everything, let's set the scene. It was a bright Saturday afternoon, the kind of day perfect for a family gathering. The reunion had been planned for months, with relatives traveling from different cities to reconnect, share stories, and enjoy each other's company. The air smelled of grilled food, children ran around laughing, and old family members sat in clusters reminiscing about the past. The venue was a large backyard, decorated with string lights and colorful banners. A long table was set up, covered with homemade dishes, potato salad, roasted chicken, freshly baked bread. The sound of music played softly in the background, blending with the chatter and occasional bursts of laughter. It was the kind of gathering where everyone felt at home, surrounded by familiar faces, warm embraces, and the comfort of family traditions. Among the guests was Emily, a woman in her mid-30s, who had been looking forward to this reunion for weeks. She wore a gentle smile, but beneath it, something lingered, something heavy. Emily had always been known as the composed one, the one who held things together, but today was different. She watched everything carefully, her eyes scanning the crowd, her hands gripping her drink just a little too tightly. Beside her was her husband, Mark. He was charming as always, engaging in conversations, cracking jokes, and moving from one group to another with ease. To anyone watching, he was the perfect husband, the kind who remembered everyone's birthdays, who always had a kind word to say. But Emily knew better. She had seen the messages, the late-night calls, the sudden change in his behavior. She had spent sleepless nights piecing everything together, and today, surrounded by their closest family members, she was ready to reveal the truth. Then there was Sarah, Mark's coworker, someone Emily had met a handful of times before. She had never paid much attention to her until recently. Sarah wasn't a close family member, but she had been invited as a friend of Mark's cousin. She blended in well, laughing at the right jokes, helping with the food, making herself comfortable. If Emily hadn't known the truth, she might have thought nothing of it. But today, every small detail stood out. The way Mark's eyes flickered toward Sarah a little too often, the way she subtly avoided looking in Emily's direction. The rest of the family was completely unaware. They were too busy catching up on each other's lives, sharing old family stories, passing plates of food around. Mark's parents were seated near the front, chatting with his uncle about an upcoming vacation. Emily's sister was taking photos, capturing the happy moments, completely oblivious to the tension building just a few feet away. As the afternoon wore on, everything seemed normal on the surface. But beneath the laughter and celebration, there was an undercurrent of something else, something waiting to erupt. Emily had chosen this moment carefully. She knew that once she spoke, there would be no turning back. And so, as the sun began to dip in the sky and the first round of toasts were raised, she took a deep breath, steadying herself for what was about to happen. Before we talk about the moment everything unraveled, let's go back to where it all began, when Emily first felt that something wasn't right. It wasn't one big revelation, but a series of small moments, tiny details that didn't seem important at first. A late-night text, a sudden change in Mark's schedule, the way he started guarding his phone like a secret he couldn't afford to lose. At first, Emily brushed it off. She had been married to Mark for almost 10 years, and in that time, they had built a life together. They had shared dreams, traveled, built a home. Trust was something she had never questioned, until now. It started with a feeling, that nagging sensation in the back of her mind, whispering that something was off. Then came the excuses. Mark had always been busy with work, but lately, his meetings ran later than usual. Business trips that never used to be a thing suddenly became frequent. When Emily asked about them, he would smile, kiss her on the forehead, and assure her it was nothing. But his eyes told a different story. One evening, while folding laundry, she noticed a faint scent on his shirt, something floral and unfamiliar. Not her perfume, not his usual aftershave. A small thing, but it stayed with her. The next day, she casually mentioned it, watching his reaction. He laughed, made a joke, and changed the subject. But Emily saw the flicker of something in his eyes, something that made her stomach turn. Then there were the phone calls. Mark had never been secretive about his phone, but now he kept it face down, silencing notifications when she was nearby. One night, while he was in the shower, a message popped up on the screen. Emily wasn't one to invade privacy, but something about the way the screen lit up, the name displayed, made her pulse quicken. Sarah. It was just a first name. It could have been anyone. But Emily knew. A wife always knows. She didn't confront him right away. Instead, she started watching more closely. She noticed the way his demeanor shifted when he talked about work, the way he avoided saying too much. When she casually asked about Sarah, he shrugged, saying she was just a coworker. Nothing more. But the way he said it, too smooth, too prepared, made Emily feel like she was being lied to. So she started digging. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about finding the truth. She checked their phone bill, something she had never done before. Late-night calls, long conversations, all to the same number. Her heart pounded as she scrolled through them. She told herself it could still be innocent. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe she was overthinking. Then she checked his social media. Mark wasn't very active online, but Sarah was. Her posts were harmless on the surface. Pictures from the office, group outings, casual captions. But then Emily saw it. A photo from a work event Mark had claimed to have skipped because he was too tired. There he was in the background, standing a little too close to Sarah, laughing at something she said. His hand rested lightly on the small of her back, a gesture so familiar, so intimate, that Emily felt like she couldn't breathe. That night, as Mark slept beside her, Emily stared at the ceiling, the weight of everything settling in. The signs had been there all along. The question was, what was she going to do about it? She spent days thinking. Confronting him at home felt too easy, too private. If he denied it, if he twisted the truth, she would have no one to back her up, no witnesses. But at the family reunion, in front of everyone who mattered, there would be no escape. The idea formed slowly, a plan taking shape in her mind. She didn't want revenge. She wanted the truth to be out in the open, where it couldn't be denied or hidden behind empty words. So she waited. She smiled. She pretended everything was fine. And when the day of the reunion arrived, she walked in with her head held high, knowing that by the end of the night, nothing would ever be the same again. Before we talk about how everything fell apart, let's step into the moment just before it happened. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the backyard. Conversations flowed easily. Drinks were poured, and laughter echoed through the air. To everyone else, this was just another perfect family gathering. But for Emily, this was the moment she had been preparing for. She stood near the patio, her fingers lightly gripping a glass of wine. Her heart pounded in her chest, but on the surface, she looked calm. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind over and over again, thinking about every possible reaction, every possible outcome. But now that the time had come, the air around her felt thick with anticipation. Mark was in the center of it all, effortlessly charming as always. He moved from group to group, laughing, making jokes, acting as if nothing was wrong. And Sarah, she wasn't far. She blended into the crowd, smiling at the right moments, making polite conversation with family members who had no idea why she was really here. Emily had thought about how to do it. Should she pull Mark aside? Should she make a quiet accusation? No, that wouldn't be enough. He had lied in the shadows for too long. This needed to be exposed under the brightest light possible. So she took a deep breath, walked to the center of the gathering, and gently tapped her glass with a spoon. The sound rang through the air, cutting through conversations and drawing every eye toward her. A hush fell over the group. People turned, expecting a toast, maybe a sentimental speech about family. Mark smiled at her, completely unaware of what was about to happen. She held his gaze for a second longer than necessary. Then, she spoke. "I just want to say how grateful I am to have everyone here," she began, her voice steady. "Family means everything. And marriage is built on trust, on honesty, on loyalty." She let the words sink in, watching the subtle shift in Mark's expression. He was still smiling, but there was something else now, a flicker of unease. She turned slightly, her eyes landing on Sarah. "And sometimes," she continued, "loyalty is tested in ways we never expect." Sarah stiffened. Mark's fingers twitched at his side. A few guests exchanged confused glances, sensing that something was off. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She had saved everything. The messages, the late-night call logs, the photos. With one swipe, she opened them and turned the screen toward Mark. "Would you like to explain this?" she asked, her voice calm, controlled. Mark's face drained of color. The confident, easy-going man who had been the center of attention just moments ago now stood frozen, his mouth opening, but no words coming out. The silence stretched. People leaned in, whispering, trying to make sense of what was happening. Mark's mother furrowed her brows. His father set down his drink. Emily's sister covered her mouth with her hand. And then, Sarah took a small step back. It was slight, barely noticeable, but Emily saw it. The way Sarah's eyes darted toward the exit, the way her breath hitched. That was it. That was the confirmation Emily needed. Mark finally spoke, but his voice was weak, uncertain. "Emily, this isn't." "Don't," she cut in sharply. "Don't insult me by lying in front of everyone. I know, I've known, and now so does everyone else." A murmur spread through the crowd. Someone gasped. Mark's mother turned to him, her face twisted with shock. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark swallowed hard, but he didn't answer. He couldn't. Emily didn't need to say anything else. The evidence spoke for itself. And in that moment, the weight of his deception collapsed around him, exposed under the watchful eyes of the people who once admired him. Before we talk about what happened next, imagine standing in a crowd where everything you thought was certain suddenly crumbles before your eyes. That was the feeling in the air, thick, heavy, filled with unspoken words. The backyard, once filled with laughter and joy, now felt like a stage where a real-life drama was unfolding in real time. Mark stood there, his face pale, his lips slightly parted, but no words came out. He looked from Emily to his parents, then to Sarah, as if searching for an escape, a way to undo the moment. But there was no way out. Gasps rippled through the gathering. A few people exchanged nervous glances, unsure of whether to step in or stay silent. Mark's mother was the first to speak, her voice shaking. "Mark, please tell me this isn't true." His father's expression was harder to read, but his tightened jaw and the way he crossed his arms spoke volumes. He was waiting for an explanation, but none came. Sarah took a small step back, her eyes darting between Mark and Emily. She looked like she wanted to disappear. The confidence she carried earlier was gone, replaced by pure panic. Emily stood tall, her hands steady, her voice unwavering. "I didn't want to believe it either," she said, her tone calm but firm. "But the lies, the late nights, the messages, they don't lie. And neither does the fact that Sarah is standing here, looking like she already knows what's coming." All eyes turned to Sarah. She swallowed hard, then finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think I should go." A single sentence, but it was enough to confirm what everyone already suspected. Mark's sister, who had been standing near the patio, let out a scoff. "Wow. Just wow," she muttered, shaking her head. "You really did this? To Emily? To all of us?" Mark ran a hand through his hair, his breathing shallow. "I didn't mean." Emily cut him off with a sharp laugh. "You didn't mean to get caught, Mark. Let's be honest." A few people murmured in agreement. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone, shifting the energy in the space. This wasn't just about a marriage falling apart. It was about trust, about betrayal, about the ripple effect of secrets. Mark's mother took a step toward Emily, her eyes filled with sadness. "I don't even know what to say," she admitted. "I had no idea." Emily met her gaze. "Neither did I. Until I did." The silence stretched for another beat before Sarah, now visibly uncomfortable, turned on her heel and quickly made her way toward the exit. A few people moved aside to let her pass, some glaring, others simply watching in stunned silence. Then, all eyes were back on Mark. His hands were on his hips now, his head slightly bowed. He looked like a man who had just realized he had lost everything. Emily didn't need an apology. She didn't need explanations. The truth was already out. And now, all that was left was the fallout. Before we talk about what happened after Sarah left, let's stay in this moment. The heavy silence, the tension thick in the air. Mark stood there, shoulders slumped, his once confident posture now deflated. He looked around, but no one came to his defense. No one spoke up for him. The weight of his choices was finally settling in, and there was nowhere to hide. Emily watched him, but she felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a quiet acceptance of what she already knew. She had spent months questioning herself, wondering if she was being paranoid, searching for reasons to ignore the signs. But now, in front of their entire family, the truth was undeniable. Mark's father finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "You had a good woman, Mark. And you threw it away for what? A few moments of excitement." Mark didn't answer. He just rubbed a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. Emily's sister stepped forward, arms crossed. "Do you even have anything to say for yourself?" she asked, her voice sharp. Mark opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? That it was a mistake? That it didn't mean anything? Those words would only make it worse. Emily turned to his mother, who was still standing there, stunned. "I know this isn't easy for you," she said, her voice softer now. "But I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore." Mark's mother wiped a tear from her eye and nodded. "You didn't deserve this, Emily," she said quietly. "None of us did." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some shook their heads, others whispered among themselves. A family gathering meant to celebrate love and connection had turned into something entirely different, a reckoning. Mark's younger cousin, who had always looked up to him, muttered under his breath, "Man, I used to think you were someone to admire." That one hit differently. Mark flinched, his hands tightening into fists. Emily felt a strange sense of calm. The confrontation was over. There was nothing left to say. The truth was out, and now everyone had to deal with it in their own way. She took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. "I won't be staying here any longer," she said, her voice clear. "I just needed everyone to know the truth. Mark, whatever happens next, that's on you." Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving behind a man who had once promised her forever, now standing alone in the ruins of his own making. Before we talk about what happened after Emily walked away, let's stay in this moment a little longer, the aftermath of a truth that could no longer be buried. Conversations had turned into hushed whispers. Some family members were still standing in shock, others shaking their heads, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The warmth of the gathering had been replaced by an uncomfortable chill, the kind that settles in when the illusion of something perfect is shattered beyond repair. Mark remained frozen in place, his gaze fixed on the spot where Emily had stood just moments ago. His breathing was uneven, his hands still clenched into fists at his sides. He looked around, desperate for someone, anyone, to say something that might make this all go away. But there was nothing. No one spoke up for him. His mother finally broke the silence. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. She had raised him to be better than this. She had watched him grow into the man she thought she knew. But now, she wasn't sure who was standing in front of her. Mark let out a shaky breath. "Mom, She held up a hand, cutting him off. "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't stand here and feed me excuses. You embarrassed Emily. You embarrassed this family. And for what?" His father remained silent, but the disappointment in his eyes was undeniable. He had always taught Mark about honor, about responsibility, about what it meant to be a man of integrity. Now, he simply shook his head and looked away. Mark's sister took a step forward, arms still crossed tightly over her chest. "You really thought you could get away with it?" she asked, disbelief dripping from every word. "That Emily wouldn't notice. That none of us would ever find out." Mark ran a hand through his hair, his frustration bubbling over. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen," he muttered. "It just happened." A sharp laugh came from the corner. It was Emily's sister. "Oh, it just happened," she repeated mockingly. "What? You accidentally texted Sarah at midnight? You accidentally lied to Emily's face? You accidentally let this go on long enough for her to gather proof?" Mark didn't respond. There was no excuse that would make this better. No justification that would erase the damage. Meanwhile, some of the older relatives sat quietly, shaking their heads in disappointment. They had come to this gathering expecting a celebration of family, not the unraveling of one. One of Mark's younger cousins finally spoke up, his voice hesitant. "So, does this mean you guys are getting a divorce?" No one answered. The word hung in the air, heavy and unspoken, but the reality was clear. There was no coming back from this. Mark let out a deep sigh and turned toward the house, needing to escape the judgmental stares, the weight of his own guilt pressing down on him. But just as he reached the porch, his father's voice stopped him. "Where are you going?" Mark hesitated. "Inside." His father shook his head. "You don't get to run from this. You don't get to just walk away and pretend like nothing happened." Mark swallowed hard. He had always been the golden boy of the family, the one people admired, the one who always seemed to have it together. But now, standing under the weight of his own mistakes, he felt smaller than he ever had before. And then the final blow came, not from his parents, not from his sister, but from his own nephew, a boy no older than 10. "I thought you loved Aunt Emily," the boy said quietly, his big, innocent eyes filled with confusion. "Why would you hurt her?" Mark felt something deep inside him break. The weight of his actions, the full impact of what he had done, settled on his shoulders in a way it never had before. But it was too late. The damage was done. The people who once looked up to him now saw him for who he really was. And no matter how much he wanted to take it back, there was no undoing the truth that had been exposed. And just like that, the truth was out, and there was no turning back. What started as a joyful family gathering turned into a moment of reckoning, where lies were exposed, trust was shattered, and the consequences of betrayal unfolded in front of everyone. Emily had suspected for months, but when the moment came, she chose to confront Mark in a way he couldn't escape. In front of the people who mattered most, she laid out the truth, forcing him to face the reality of his actions. And when it was all over, she walked away, leaving Mark to deal with the mess he had created. This story isn't just about one marriage falling apart. It's about the power of truth, the importance of trust, and the reality that secrets always have a way of coming to light. What do you think? Was Emily right to expose Mark at the family reunion, or should she have handled it differently? Have you ever witnessed a moment like this, where someone's secrets were revealed in front of everyone? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.